Throughout history, there has been suffering, but today there's an unprecedented amount of suffering that's brought on by ourselves to ourselves. In fact, most of the suffering today has not to do with famine or war or perhaps the plague or things like that. Most of the suffering has to do with the diseases that we've brought upon ourselves as a country. Right now, we stand at literally a crossroads because there are two classes of people, I believe, in the world today. It has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with economic situation. The two classes of people who live in the world today are those who are going to die early and miserably from disease, and those who have learned the lessons to avoid that situation in their lives. We're here today in a church, and so I have to ask you, do you believe that we are a reflection of our Creator? Do you believe that this human form is a gift? Do you believe that this is the temple that we've been told it is? Because if we do, and we desecrate that temple, and we laugh at that gift, and we fail to take care of this precious thing that we call life, then we are spitting in the face of God. Do you realize that? That when you desecrate the temple, that you have spat in the face of your Creator. It is our responsibility to get the most out of our life. It's our responsibility to experience all the joy, the love, the happiness, the fellowship that is intended. And instead, we see people living in misery, and we see people making poor choices, acting in a self-destructive way. And the truth is, most of that is not necessarily caused because we intend to hurt ourselves or intend to harm ourselves, but because we have been given permission to by the media. We've been given permission to by our parents. We've given permission to by just about everybody. And even medical doctors would rather prescribe a medicine than tell you to have more discipline in your life. We stand on the brink of a disaster, a human disaster for the first time in history. Our children are not going to live longer than our grandparents. What used to be called adult onset diabetes has been replaced by juvenile diabetes. It's the same disease. It's just that it used to take 20 or 30 years to develop, 40 years to develop, and today it's affecting children as young as 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And so instead of adult onset diabetes, it's called juvenile diabetes, and it is affecting a higher percentage of our population than ever before in history. 30% or more of Americans are at risk for developing diabetes or have diabetes right now. Type 2 diabetes, not type 1. Type 2 diabetes is completely a result of our lifestyle. And people think, when I ask diabetics, I say, what's the worst part about being a diabetic? And you know what they tell me? It's having to test my blood sugar, or it's having to remember to take those pills, or having to do those shots. Well, you're wrong. That's not the worst part. You're not even close. The worst part is the fact that the number one cause of amputations in America today is diabetes. That's right. When they cut off your fingers and your toes and maybe even your feet and your legs. The number one cause of blindness in America today is type 2 diabetes. The second leading cause of renal failure after alcoholism is diabetes. The third leading cause of death in America today is diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is brought upon by our lifestyle, by our failure to simply supply our body with the basic core nutrients it needs, and the excess of processed food and sugar that reaches the blood. A lot of people, even doctors I know, don't even know what insulin does in the body. In fact, I ask people all the time and they go, oh, insulin controls glucose from getting too high in the blood. Wrong. That's its secondary job. The primary job of insulin over the last 40,000 years of human existence has been to make the food we eat last longer in the blood, to keep the sugar in our blood. That was insulin's job because we weren't eating enough. If we were lucky to have excess food, the insulin was smart enough to take that sugar and store it in our body as fat, so later when we're starving, we would have a way to survive. But insulin no longer helps people without enough food have stable blood glucose. Instead, it's constantly working for people who have too much food, and it's constantly taking excess sugar and storing it into the cells. But after a while, it protests. It says, no, this is wrong. I'm not supposed to be doing this all the time. I have a different job. And then it starts resisting doing its secondary job. And we call that's right, insulin resistance. We call it pre-diabetes, because the body has begun to stop allowing you to abuse it. Did you know that UCLA did a study that proved that type 2 diabetes can be cured in 3 weeks in 100% of the cases who followed the proper protocols? And this study is published. How did they accomplish that? Was it some new medicine? Was it some exotic herb from faraway land? No, it was really simple. It's called 5-4-3-2-1. 5 servings of whole grains a day, 4 servings of green vegetables a day, 3 servings of deep, dark, pigmented fruit a day, 2 servings of lean protein a day, 1 hour of exercise a day. And after 21 days, type 2 diabetes is completely eliminated. Well, UCLA started that study with 63 participants. And do you know how many finished? Do you know how many had the discipline for 3 weeks? 21 short days. 30 out of 63 finished the study. Of those 30, do you know how many had their type 2 diabetes cured? 30, which means it's 100% effective. So if I told you you could change your diet and be extremely healthy, or you could not change your diet and end up blind, amputated, impotent, and on a dialysis machine, and you choose the latter, what is wrong with this world? What's wrong with our thought process? What is wrong with people in the world today that they would rather suffer, that they would rather punish themselves than change? I ask doctors all the time, have you heard of the UCLA study? They say, yeah. I said, do you tell your patients to forget about the medicine and to go on the 5-4-3-2-1 and get rid of their diabetes? And they say, no. And I said, well, why not? And they say, because if I do, and I've tried that, Dave. I really have tried that. And you know what my patients tell me? I'd rather die than change. I'd rather die than give up my lifestyle. And you know what my answer is? Well, you're going to get your wish, because you're going to. You see, most of the time, people see changing their life as being really, really difficult. So what I've tried to do is provide the tools that people could use by studying food, by studying herbs, by studying diet, by studying ancient culture, by studying disease. And what I have found is that the answers are really quite simple. They're rarely complex. And in fact, the answer is so simple that it is all around us. Eating 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Sounds crazy, huh? But if we ate 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, the cancer, the heart disease, the diabetes, that are the 3 leading causes of death in America today, would no longer be the 3 leading causes of death in America today. Now we know that we have spent millions, billions of dollars studying cancer. Billions of dollars studying cancer, and yet, for the last 20 years, cancer rates have increased each and every year, despite that effort. How could that be? How could that be? Well, the truth of the matter is that we are what we eat. And if we eat compromised food, what does it say in Daniel? It says the compromised tree cannot bear uncompromised fruit. Well, we have been eating from the fruit of compromised trees for almost 60 years now. Ever since they started using chemicals in our soil, chemical fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides, ever since they started genetically modifying food, ever since they started irradiating food, pasteurizing food, since we started using preservatives in food, artificial colors in food, artificial sweeteners in food, it's no longer food. It's no longer fit to eat. It will no longer nourish our body. It will no longer create the vibrant health that our Creator intended for each of us to experience.